I'm Luis Reyes. I am an anthropologist, Peruvian anthropologist. I work as a professor at the National University of San Marcos, located in Lima, Peru. And currently, I am a fellow at the Alari, the Afro-Latin American Research Institute at Harvard. At this time, I would like to speak with you about my experience with the method pretext and how I have applied with my students from back home in Peru virtually. Recently, 4 weeks ago, I started with them a course, and I have been using pretext as the main method to deliver the classes. I think that it is very different than using the traditional pedagogical method that I was using when I was in Peru. The main difference relies in the fact that through pretext, the students are the main protagonists and the main participants of the sessions. I'm also participating, but also only as a modulator, as a facilitator of the sessions. And the facilitator is not only my role, my students are also taking the role weekly. They rotate it, and in each week, each of the students take the leading role, providing the main text and also the leading the conversations and asking the questions to their peers. I think another important difference that pretext provides is that it gives you as a facilitator more freedom, not only to be the one that has the knowledge, but also to participate in equal basis with the other participants. So through this method, it is important to know, and also it is important to share that you are not the one that hold all the knowledge, but also that other participants do have their own way of approaching to the information and the point of view that is behind the text. And not only behind the text, but also in connection to the student's background, to the participant background. And in that relationship between the text and each of the participants relies the most powerful tool, which is the ability to create knowledge. One of the most beautiful experiences that I have had with the implementation of pretext in a classroom was here last semester when I was invited by a dear friend of mine to go and visit her high school where she works. She told me that she had a difficult class with students that were 15, 14 years old, and she invited me because her class had as a last assignment to do a kind of ethnographic work in their community in Dorchester. And since she knew that I was an anthropologist, she wanted me to go and to share with them what an ethnographer does and how they can conduct an interview, to explain them a little bit what conducting an interview was all about. So the night before, I was a little nervous because it was going to be the first time that I was visiting a US high school and the first time that I was going to interact with people from the US, with kids from the US. Besides, she told me that it was a challenging group and that sometimes they would not pay attention. So I was wondering how to get my message come to their heads and how they could, how how I could generate rapport with them in such a little time, because she told me that I was going to have from 30 to 40 minutes to interact with the kids and to explain them this. So I started developing a PowerPoint, a traditional way of producing information and transmitting information to the students. But once I finished my PowerPoint, I realized that it was very dry and it was mainly a way of transmitting information in the traditional way. So I had explained in a slide what the ethnographer does, and in the other slides, I was speaking a little bit about the interviews, the types of interviews and how you need to conduct an interview, an ethnographic interview during fieldwork. But since she told me that it was a challenging group, then I I decided that it was not the best way of approaching it. So before going to sleep, I decided that I was not going to share the slides that I had that I had created for them, and instead of that, I was going to bring a text. And the text that I wanted to bring was a text that I like very much, written by Jorge Luis Borges, titled "The Ethnographer," in which basically Borges tells a story of a guy that goes to an indigenous community And after learning for about a year or a couple of years with this indigenous community, then he decides to return to his hometown here in the US. But he's changed and he knows the secret of indigenous people, and he decides to quit the 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 career as an anthropologist because he does not want to reveal the secret that he has learned by living with indigenous people. Uh, so it's an interesting text, and I brought it, and we start developing the structure, following the structure of pretext during the class. A student, I asked a student to please read it out loud to be the lector. So he read it while the rest of the class was taking notes artistically, drawings, doodling around. And for the kids, it was a little impressive because I think it was one of the first times that they were not asked to be doing what the professor wanted to do, which is like write traditional notes in their notebooks. I just asked them to please don't do that and to just draw whatever they want, but to pay attention silently. And they did that. In the second stage, when I asked them to please ask questions, not to me, but to the text, I was really surprised because the questions were focusing on the ideas and on issues that they had within themselves and that provided information about their identity and provided information about their positionality and point of view in the world. So in this stage, when they were asking questions and answering the questions that they have asked to the text, I could identify that many of them saw themselves as Latinx or Latin Americans as well. Many of them were Black kids, Black girls, Latinx girls, kids, and boys. And in their questions, I saw their urgency that they had, not only to learn more about themselves, not only to learn more about their communities, but also to learn about their histories. And many of them wanted to interview their grandparents because they did not know that much about the times of before, about the places where they came from, their family came from. And I also had the opportunity to share my question that was related to the way in which I do fieldwork, which paradoxically is a way that was similarly to theirs. I do fieldwork with my grandparents. I do fieldwork to find out more information about my community. So I realized that by giving them the freedom to explore the text and to get inspired by the text in the ways that they wanted to do it, I could connect with them more than if I would have brought an external structure, and just told them what to do. I realized that by applying the structure and the method provided by pretext, they were free to explore the notion of what an ethnographer is and how to conduct interviews in their own ways, bringing also their knowledges, bringing their stories, bringing their questions and curiosity to the classroom. And through this way, I also realized, and my friend also told me, that we students and I developed a class that was engaging. And during these 30, 40 minutes, I did not have the problems that I was anticipating. And my anxiety and my nervousness about not being able to connect as a Latino that have come here to the US, but does not know much about the US society or the Boston society, the Dorchester society, I could still find connections and links that were unexpected to me. But at the same time, I felt that it was really profound and really powerful to see that despite the differences, and also by bringing a text that normally would be considered a difficult text, because we know that Borges sometimes is difficult even for people that come to university, like through those materials, we were able to connect and to create knowledge that was polyphonic and that allow us to symmetrize the relationship between me, who was asked to go and to teach them a little bit more about ethnography and about how to conduct an interview, and them, that they were supposed to be the repositories of that knowledge that I was going to bring them. So instead, I think it was a transformational experience for me and for the students, because we were able to connect as friends in a way, And besides sharing the information that was needed to be shared, we also learn a little bit more about each other. So I think that is very important to include pretext or see pretext as part of the Alari, the Afro-Latin American Research Institute, because it accompanies the ethos, the spirit of the institute, the spirit that seeks to establish symmetrical relationships with the communities that we work with, not only producing knowledge about the communities, but also thinking with the communities, next to the communities, next to the people, the Afro-Latin American people that hold the knowledge, traditional knowledge, ancestral knowledge that spread through different countries and areas in Latin America. I think it's very important to start working with pretext in the Afro-Latin American Research Institute because it provides us with the opportunity to connect different populations with a pedagogical method that respects or seeks to respect the specificalities of the Afro-Latin American communities and of every community that can interact with this method. I think that it is wonderful to have this opportunity because many different people from many different areas will be able to access texts that are written in an academic languages, in a literary languages, through their own specificities, through their own points of views, without being subjugated to adopting the point of view of Western society. I think pretext provides you with a structure that will allow each of the participants to see the world from their own point of view, but also navigate difficult texts or what apparently are difficult texts, academic texts, respecting their own cultural and conceptual world and conceptual framework that they have developed within their own traditional societies and cultures. So I think that it is it's very powerful to have a tool like this because, as we know, Afro-Latin American communities, Afro-Latin American societies inhabit the world in their specific ways, and it is important for them to keep the power that their concepts and their points of views have. And by using pretext as a method to analyze academic texts and to engage with literary readings, I think it is important to maintain this tension, to maintain this relationship that can be established symmetrically and respectfully among different communities, among different cultures. So seeking the opportunity to create a space in which Afro-Latin American peoples can learn and interact with this methodology, in October of 2024, we are developing a small course within the Afro-Latin American certificate that is provided by Alari for Latin American people, Afro-Latin American people, people that are part of this certificate to study and to learn the structure of pretext. We are going to develop a course for 5 weeks in which people that are registered as participants in this certificate can learn the basis and can learn the structure and can learn how to apply this methodology. And for us, it's really important to do this because it will allow us to reach many different communities. So people that are closer to these communities, people that come from these communities, will learn for 5 weeks with us the method, and then they will be able to apply it and to take it to each of their communities, to take it to the people with whom they interact, with whom they learn, with whom they work. And I think is going to be a really beautiful and a really powerful encounter because it's going to make the gap that exists between academia and the rest of the world and the communities that we sometimes create discourses about less deep. And it's going to provide, I hope, a space in which academia can learn from communities and communities can learn from academia in an equal basis.